Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to It Lost. I am Stylosa and welcome back to Pro Overanalyzed, and today is going to be a very special one. Remember the pirate ship video I made the other day where I was like, hey guys, this is how you beat the pirate ship. Well, let's take a look at some pros trying to beat the pirate ship and some pros while playing in the pirate ship. I'm going to hand you over to Josh for this. Josh, my man, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is right, it's me again. Welcome to another episode of Pro Overanalyzed. Today we're going to be looking at a bit of a different paced game, because sometimes things go wrong, and where else are they going to go wrong but Australia? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to Junkertown, and I have a bit of a rant about this map. We'll be getting to it later, but Junkertown is one of the most interesting maps in the game at the moment, is what I would say. To be diplomatic, I would say a number of other things, but I'm holding myself back at this point. Junkertown's an interesting map because it's defined by the hero picks on it, which is primarily Bastion and Aurora, and that's what we got to see quite a lot of at the Overwatch League. And I did a little video on this not too long ago on my own channel, just to plug myself, so to speak. But yeah, it's one of these maps that is very much defined by the strategy used on it, right? If you've played it on ranked and you played it in the ladder, you know, you've seen it where you just get this killdozer of the pirate ship sort of setting sail for fail and going through the entire map feeling almost unstoppable. And we're going to see how these pros try and deal with it. Of course, we've got the London Spitfire once again going up against LA Gladiators. London Spitfire running a different roster to what we saw in the last Pro Overanalyzed, just because London Spitfire is made up of technically two Korean teams. Basically, this is basically the GC Busan roster, and they had a bit of a rough showing on the first day, so it doesn't always go well, and we're going to find out a little bit about why. So you can see the gates are about to open, and let's just pause it right before they do, just to see the team comps, just in case you are unfamiliar with how this usually works. So then on the LA Gladiators, we have no great surprises. We could see the Bastion getting set up and the Aurora working with it. So what you're basically relying on is a main team comp of these sort of guys who are just going to be mainly staying around the payload, and then poor Asher here on the McCree is going to be staying relatively near, but he's going to be dealing with any threats sort of coming around on the side. So for example, if Spitfire wanted to run a tracer and try and get a pulse bomb in, it will be Asher trying to deal with that. And meanwhile, to try and address this, London Spitfire suspect that something like this is going to be happening. You have Hureg on the Widowmaker, who's going to be looking for some kind of angle. You can see he's set up over here. There's a little rock that you can set on as the Widowmaker. You can occasionally get a shot even into the spawn and start clearing people out nice and early. Otherwise, standard supports, nothing too surprising with the support lineup. Profit on the Junkrat to shatter those barriers, and Wu Yao there just to help him out. Gesture, meanwhile, will be playing the Aurora just for that extra tanky stodginess. So as we get it rolling, what goes wrong? Well, one of the first things you've got to understand about this strategy is that this is the most vulnerable part of it, right? You've got to get Bastion onto the payload. He gets straight onto it. Now, one of the key weaknesses of Bastion is that you can pull him off using the Aurora grip. The biggest issue, though, is it's already happened. It literally happens in the first couple of seconds, and it's this barrier here. You might not be able to see it super well. The colors don't quite show the Aurora barrier great, but there is an Aurora barrier on the low ground, and the moment that happens, all the people up here are suddenly going to get mowed down by the Combine Harvester that is Surefour. This one barrier costs them so much in terms of the defense, because this is a damage amp Bastion, right? I call this the World War II strategy, or the World War I strategy, where you just have a machine gun and a trench, and you just start cutting people down. It's actually pretty terrifying to behold, ladies and gentlemen. So, as the payload starts rolling through, Surefour just gets kills on absolutely everyone, and even though Profit got a very quick early pick, I think it might have even been with a trap and a mine, it doesn't matter because Surefour's already killed absolutely everyone, and this is where the problems on Junkertown become manifest. Every single flank and every single pathway now pretty much opens up in front of where the Bastion is. You can see it right in front of you now. Like, every single opening to get out of the spawn and get to contest this literally comes out in front of the Bastion. So you're walking into this high damage gunfire no matter where you come from, and with the two barriers in front of him, it's so difficult to get there. Now that Gesture's gone down, it's going to be extremely difficult. They are using the pull, Hydration is using the pull ability extremely well as well, basically calling his shots, letting people know where he's pulling stuff to, grabbing them out and setting them up for Surefour to get those kills. It's really nice team play out of the Gladiators, and it's doing a huge amount of work. Gesture also looks a little bit uncomfortable on the Aurora, sets up on the low ground, has to run like hell now as Ash is going to hunt it down. Not too dangerous, and honestly, this is at least a team comp that you don't have to worry about diving into your back line too much. It's literally just going to be a McCree. We do have a replay as well of Shaz just cleaning up here on the Zenyatta, but once that Orisa went down on the high ground, this was just open killing now for the Bastion. Again, nothing can really get to him with those two barriers, and then it starts causing problems. Hagapen going to be using one of the few flank routes, does get pulled out of it though, hydration there. Prophet goes in for a Riptide, just goes on the tanks. Just goes on the tanks! You got to get rid of the Bastion, or the supports. You can't go on the tanks. If you go on the tanks, they'll survive. They're fine. They're hunky-dory. And even then, GeForce might be feeling a little bit nervous, and this is where it gets really scary. Even if you pull him off once he starts getting that tank mode available to him, it just goes clonk crank, I'm a tank, and starts killing absolutely everyone. So pulling people off, not going to make the biggest difference in the world. Now then, it might look disastrous, but let me tell you this, it's more disastrous than you think. I want to just point something out. Actually, he's just vanished, so I need to let it run for a second or two. You see this, there's a little thing happening in the middle of all of this. It's very, very easy to miss. I mean, Hurreg's going to die. Hurreg is absolutely dead, but this is disaster. You see this little speck down here? This is a Zenyatta, ladies and gentlemen. This is the lesser spotted backline Zenyatta. This is a Zenyatta called Hagapen who has almost got his ultimate, and this ultimate's going to be very, very crucial because the strategy that they're running, the LA Gladiators are running, starts falling apart when you start getting into that third phase. Then you can start getting around, then you can start getting angles, then you have like high ground to shoot down from that isn't in front of Bastion, so you can really start doing a lot of work there. But with Hagapen stuck in the backline, we're going to see something really, really bad happen, right? A lot of high-level Overwatch is built around support ultimates. It's built around the idea of having these support ultimates available. Now, Hagapen gets a kill on Big Goose. That's cool. But Big Goose is going to respawn literally closer to the payload than where he was. Meanwhile, Hurreg's still back there. Like, you can see GeForce checking for him. He's checking for this Zenyatta. iRemix is stood behind GeForce. He's not scared at all. There we go. There's the Zen stuck in the backline. Like, what are you doing there? Meanwhile, London Spitfire are firing off ultimates trying to just clear the payload, but LA Gladiators just retreat behind the door. They're A-OK, and suddenly we see this Transcendence come in just to get back to the team. Transcendence, one of the most important support ultimates in the game, basically makes you unkillable for a period of a fight unless a headshot comes through, is used just as a mobility skill. That's bad. That's really bad. That's disastrous at that point. Like, Hagapen should have died ages ago, regroup with his team, and then they would have had a better shot at trying to defend this point. Now, we do see London Spitfire start to change things up. Hurreg has gone off, the Widowmaker has gone onto a Bastion of his own, basically fighting fire with fire. They need to just get that set up and then try and out-damage the Bastion on the point. Because they have Bastion Junkrat, they can absolutely do that. They have Bastion Junkrat Roadhog that does more damage than Bastion, McCree, and Reinhardt. So you can get through even the two barriers that LA Gladiators are running at the moment. That's no problem for them, but they've got to set it up properly, and this is sort of one of the big issues. Gesture has just dropped a bongo, has just dropped the supercharger, and there's not quite enough pressure there. Everyone was on half hit points. They don't have quite enough momentum just to push forward, and so LA Gladiators, LA Spitfires, LA Gladiators can just retreat back a little bit. Shawfall gets himself set up on the flank, and this is terrifying. This is absolutely terrifying. He just comes through, destroys the Mercy from the flanks, forces out the Transcendence, but again, it's just too little too late. Mismanagement of support ultimates. They're desperate at this point, and now LA Gladiators can just wait out the Transcendence, use their own. Shield4 is A-OK, he can just set up wherever he likes now because he's sort of wrapped in that comfortable blanket of 300 hit points per second, and then it's no problem just to get back on the payload and roll it forward. Now, you might have heard me whine about the map a little bit earlier, but this is mostly on London Spitfire at this point. When you get to this third point, this is where you can really start breaking this tactic. As I said before, you can get set up on high ground, you can spam down with Junkrat, you can find targets. But LA Spitfire had a couple of missed opportunities as well, like Prophet's Riptire, for example. It's very easy to build those Riptires very quickly, but just using it on the tanks and hoping to kill them with an air-detonated Riptire, which does less damage, or it's basically got a smaller explosive radius when it's in the air than when it's on the ground, isn't going to be as effective as trying to go for the supports or trying to go for the Bastion itself. Going for the Bastion itself is a little bit dubious because, of course, Mercy can just pick him right back up. Otherwise, I'm just going to jump us ahead to the London Spitfire attack. So you can see the Gladiators starting to set up, and honestly the Gladiators as a roster are a team I quite like. A lot of people have them pinned relatively low in the standings, but they do have a lot of star talent on their team. Shawfall, for example, an excellent player. Big Goose and Shaz, a very solid support lineup. Hydration has one of the best Farahs in the world in my mind. It's unfortunate that we don't get to see it more often, but it is a superb Farah, trust me on that one. Now, otherwise they're going to be setting up and doing something a little bit sneaky. I actually quite like this player. Basically I help run a tournament server called Scrim Central as well, and we saw a team team do some very, very interesting strats using a May to lift a Bastion for an ambush similar to this one. Remember what I said on the first push, that the vulnerable period is between getting Bastion onto the payload and getting, well, just getting set up. This just sort of really emphasizes that, right? It's a beautiful pull from iRemix, who's on the Orisa this time, just yanking people out of the spawn, setting them up for a couple of early kills, and now it's all up to Hureg. It's literally 1 versus 6, 1 shot, 1 kill, but everyone's behind a barrier except for Hydration, who's, well, a big tanky roadhog. You basically need to shoot him in the head 3 times just to bring him down, because he'll just huff a paint can if you hit him once. Asher goes for a cheeky little flank, and, well, it works out about as well as you would expect it. His hat getting blown clean off there by Hureg. Don't mess around with Widowmakers, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, it goes very, very poorly. This was a catastrophically bad moment for the poor LA Gladiators when Shawful accidentally gives Prophet a boost. I think I'll try and give you a slow motion replay of that one, because Prophet gets set up beautifully and can start cutting people down. A little bit lucky there. It was nice to see the coordination though between iRemix and Shawful using that pull and then the detonated mine just to really get a lot of work done. Of course, a Hureg little replay here just to see him blow someone's head off, and then I think he finds another target. Maybe he doesn't. Oh no. Oh God, all bang and no bluster. Shawful now going for a couple of greedy jumps. I actually really want to highlight this moment because I get the feeling that Hureg is just whiffing a couple of shots here that he really should have been able to hit. Junkrat has a relatively easy model for a Widowmaker to land on, and Shawful's just jumping all over the place. This should be clay pitch and shooting for him. Now he's finally getting his shots in, and now it's starting to work out. Gets a beautiful dink there onto the head there, and then you see a Mercy just having a bit of disco fever over on the side, but of course that just gets put an end to. But of course the issue with Widowmaker is that she isn't good at fast cleanup when there's a lot of cover, so Shawful and Shaz can just stay nice and hidden. We do see Wu Yao trying to go in there, but it's just not quite enough. Does get out the Transcendence, which is actually a little nice bonus for them, but unfortunately Hureg spent a little bit too long there out in the open, has to back away. He's lucky to survive the hook from Roadhog and now has to back up once more. Now it's up to London Spitfire just to try and get back onto the point, but they're completely surrounded. This is nice posturing by the LA Gladiators, just trying to make sure that there is nowhere safe for Prophet to set up. He has to use the tank form, and even that isn't too successful. Gets hunted down by Hydration and by Shawful, who are going to clean him up. And once again, you see the LA Gladiators holding on. Again, this is just good positioning from them. They're basically making use of all the space available to them, moving around, wrapping around the enemy team as much as they can, and getting set up there. Hagapen, with a good pick on Shawful, though, will blow this wide open. Big Goose has to activate Valkyrie just to keep them alive and just to keep them safe during this, and this does give Gesture a little bit of time to set up. Prophet, also swapping off the Bastion, is now on his Junkrat at the moment, hunting down Asher, who's a little bit isolated at this point. If they can get another grenade on him, it'll be absolutely superb. And now that he's behind the Orisa, this is where you really want to be. Of course, is behind an Orisa, but unfortunately it's just too little too late. There's not enough happening on the front line, or just too many people going down on the front line. And again, Hureg struggling to find an angle and struggling to find too many more kills. He's occasionally getting a pick here and there, but it's still not quite enough. It's not quite what you need out of your Widowmaker when there's so much pressure happening elsewhere. It's going to be a big task now for London Spitfire to make something happen, but this is one of the things that I quite like seeing out of the pro scene and sort of developing strategies. It's been this is basically the first time that we've seen Orisa be meta, and so we're seeing a lot more Orisa strategies develop. We're seeing a lot more of these sort of supercharger strategies develop, and this one's not the greatest in the world, but it does force a response from the enemy team, forces them also to cluster up in that Transcendence, and then that sets it up for Prophet to get a very, very easy Riptire in just to clear out a lot of targets. So the supercharger basically forces a response. You're seeing these initiations using it, which is extremely powerful. Supercharger, in my mind personally, is one of the more underrated ultimates in the game. It's very, very powerful, just because of that huge DPS increase that your team gets. Your entire team is effectively nano boosted during the duration. Of course, you don't get that tankiness, but you do get a huge amount of damage output. You can shred barriers, you can shred hit points, and there's no problem doing so. So seeing these initiations using it is very, very strong. Now, this is a problem for London Spitfire to deal with. Hydration is going to be set up in that window, and the Roadhog is a real issue to get rid of when he's up there. You got to basically pull him out, because otherwise you aren't going to have enough damage just to finish him off. iRemix there in a bit of a silly position on the stairs. Orisa barrier not great on stairs. They did improve it slightly a while ago to have a bit of a lower floor on it, but it's still not quite enough, and it sets Hureg up beautifully for a couple of shots. Hureg again looking for more targets, and now the LA Gladiators having a bit of a tough time, but it's still not quite enough. London Spitfire are not running the pirate ship anymore, so they're just engaging pretty much straight up, and pound for pound it looks like LA Gladiators are starting to win out. Again, the Widowmaker a little bit too slow in getting a couple of these kills, and Prophet just not finding the grenades. He's just having a bit of a bad day at this point, and it's all going a bit wrong for him. And now it feels like the wheels have fallen off the train a little bit. It's just looking a little bit difficult. They managed to spot out where hydration is, where that Roadhog is sneaking around in the backline, but they've got to devote so much, basically keeping Prophet busy, tied up, just stalling out for a Roadhog that isn't even there. And he's so worried about this backline threat that he's not doing a huge amount on the front line. They do manage to shatter that barrier, but you just see LA Gladiators back up, wait till the next barrier's there, then start to engage. Asher, meanwhile, getting a good kill there onto Gesture. Big Goose is forced to activate Valkyrie already so early in the fight. LA Gladiators just sort of staying out of the fight. They're basically not engaging super hard, just waiting for these picks to come through. Hureg's having difficulty finding an angle, bought enough time for Sure4 to get a tire in, and suddenly this Valkyrie's run out of juice, and that is that. Big Goose can activate his own if he needs it, and he has done, and there's just no problem for them. They're completely safe now that they can engage. They know it's safe, and they can just go and do so. Now London Spitfire getting a little bit desperate, and this is where it just seems to feel a little bit rudderless. Now, what I will say is that this is pre-season. What I'm going to say about pre-season and how I judge pre-season is this: a bad performance is fixable. A bad performance in pre-season is absolutely fixable. Some teams haven't had enough time to practice. Some teams haven't had enough time to sort of get used to the environment that they're in, all that kind of stuff. Preseason is basically a dress rehearsal. What you should look for in preseason are the performances above expectation. A couple of players went above and beyond, and those are the ones you really should focus on. A bad result in preseason is it's fixable. It's okay. London Spitfire absolutely delivering a bit of a bad result right now as they swap up pretty much to a pure dive comp, and they're going to have a rough time for it. We saw how this went for Team UK, for pity's sake, when they just basically went, oh god, we don't know what to do now. Oh my god, let's go back to dive. And it kind of looked a little bit like this. So don't panic in your games, ladies and gentlemen, or you end up looking like Team UK. And we don't want to look like Team UK. You don't want to look like Team UK. Trust me. It feels pretty bad. Trust me. I was part of that. And it hurt. It hurt, ladies and gents. Anyway, this game is about wrapped up at this point. Once the Desperation Lucio comes out, and once everyone's sort of swapped onto heroes just to try and get onto the point, you can basically say it's pretty much over. LA Gladiators manage a hold, and it looks like London Spitfire have a bit of a rough time. The key issues, of course, a couple of early tanking mistakes. When you basically don't want to make a mistake, you've got to sort of capitalize on that moment of vulnerability when you can maybe pull Bastion off the payload, make it difficult for Bastion to get set up on the payload. Shooting a barrier onto the low ground causes so many issues, means that you're going to lose so much ground so quickly, and you're constantly going to be scrambling just to get set up once again. A couple of duff rip tires. Hureg not really finding the shots that he needed all the time as consistently as he needed. Now, it's fixable. It's absolutely fixable, and I imagine this team is going to, I think its full coaching staff is available to it now, and they're all set up and good to go, so hopefully their performances will be better. Of course, we did see London Spitfire improve throughout the preseason as well, especially when they did start mixing up the roster as well. The GC Busan and the C9 Kongdu rosters getting mixed up a little bit and looking real good in the other matches. Otherwise, I have been Josh's one voice amongst many. Thank you for watching to the end, and I'll see you guys next time. Doodles.